understand the rubric so that when whoever comes, who's the volunteer to speak? So when Caleb comes up here and talks with Frau First.
Like first lady.
First, yeah. I've always said Forrest in my mind.
Yeah, I know.
First.
Yeah.
So when Caleb comes up here and talks with Frau First, that you guys can give the feedback. You guys can do the assessment, all right? We've got to understand the rubric to be able to do that. So the rubric has three main levels, and they are novice, intermediate, and advanced. Okay? And the goal is to determine where the student is performing, whether it's novice level, intermediate level, or advanced level. Within each of these, there are three sub-levels. Right? There's low, mid, and high for each of these here. And really, whether you're at novice, mid, or high depends on how much of this you're also doing, how much of the intermediate level you're able to display as well. So you can show a whole bunch of intermediate level, but just a little bit of novice, and you're considered novice high. Right.
On the thing where I'm grading you with, that would look a bit like that, okay? So here you
So
see the lower novice. You act like a parrot.
Yeah,
I like that.
And then intermediate, you can like go back and forth, have some conversation. you have like the survival skills. You can like you can do those things that are the most basic elements. Like you can find a place to sleep. You can get a hotel room. You can ask. You can order food. You can make purchases. You can do those things that keep you alive, right? Linguistic survivor. Advanced is a reporter, right? You can talk at length about different topics. That's the advanced level. And
we are here in German too, so what level should we be at the end of the year? Kind of. What is the expectation?
The benchmarks are, so, well here you see them, novice low, novice mid, and novice high. You see these little graphs right here? I was going to talk about it on this rubric that I was drawing, but if it's just a flat line like this all the way through novice, and you never do anything up here in intermediate, you just flat line through novice, you're considered novice low. But if novice mid is where most of the time you're at this level, but you have a couple of peaks like that go up into intermediate, so you show some of this every once in a while, but mostly you're here, then you're novice mid. Whereas if most of it is up here at intermediate, and you only drop down a couple of times, you only rely on this every once in a while, then you're at novice high. Right, and that's how it works. And the same thing goes for here, the same thing up here. Right? So what are those themes though? What is it that at novice level, when we say most of the time you're here, some of the time you're here, but what does it mean to be at a novice low? What does that mean? Right? And it's this simple. At novice, you're using words, using phrases, maybe. And sometimes you use lists. Okay? At intermediate, you can use sentences. You can produce sentences. And at advanced, you can produce paragraphs. Okay? And this is what is produced. Alright? That's what's being produced. Any thoughts or questions about what these things are? What they look like? Everybody knows what this one is right here. What is a sentence?
Complete thought with the subject and the predicate.
Alright.
Form with modifiers.
Alright, so it may or may not have modifiers. Subject and verb. For what we're doing, subject and verb, you got your sentence. Alright?
You know your accusative, so you know objects, alright?
Yeah, you guys have case marking and all that stuff. So paragraph is where you take multiple sentences and you order them very specific order to present a larger message. Right? So is it possible to have a bunch of sentences that actually don't form a paragraph?
Yeah.
Yes. They could even be about the same topic. But unless they're in a specific order, then it's not a paragraph. You know it's a paragraph when they're in a specific order and you rearrange them, and then rearranging them breaks the message, right? It loses the message. That's how you know it's a paragraph. So that's what's being produced. And here's what's the student doing with the language. At novice, they're using something memorized. Okay? That comes first. And next, they're creating at intermediate. Creating, what is creating? Go ahead.
Not regurgitating one thing, it's like creating something entirely off your head instead of memorizing sentences.
Alright, so you're taking, usually, like was said, it's something new. So you might take something you already learned and you shuffle it around and you recombine it. And so you're creating something. Sometimes we say recombine instead of creating. So creating and recombining. And then up here is narrating or describing in detail. Alright? So narrating is telling a story, has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And describing is where there's enough detail that you can recognize it. Alright? Now over here, the last one is who's controlling the topic. And down at the novice level, who's controlling the topic? Got it. Here? Okay, it's teacher and student together, and then up here? Yes. Student is asking the question, student is talking for the amount of time they desire to talk, and they move on, and so on. Alright, so, who's the volunteer? Caleb, come on up here.
Go Caleb!
So, Caleb is going to demonstrate down here.
I love you.
You got like a round of applause before you even spoke. That's awesome. Alright, and then
Oh, I'll be the interpreter. Yes. Yes.
well, you're actually going to ask the questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
So this is what I would suggest, that you start out by just asking Caleb about himself and let him talk, just open-ended, very open-ended. Tell me about yourself. Let him talk. Let him decide what he wants to talk about. He may mention sports. He may mention family. He may mention school. He may mention hobbies. He may mention anything. But you're just letting him kind of figure out what he wants to talk about. So
Okay.
just start with that.
Gut. Hallo Caleb, wie geht's dir?
Mir geht's gut, danke.
Gut.
Wie
Prima.
geht's?
Danke, mir geht's auch gut. Kannst du mir was erzählen über dich? Was magst du erzählen?
So, ich mag Schule. Schule ist sehr interessant. Mein Lieblingsfach ist Geschichte, aber ich mag Deutsch sehr viel.
Let's have a quick stop. Ich mag Schule. Schule ist sehr interessant. I like school. School is interesting. I really like history. But I also like German.
Yeah.
All right, so let's do a timeout really quickly. Okay, Caleb, what do you think? Oh, let's look at this board right here, and we'll pick it up in a second. But so far, what is the topic that you've talked about? School. Okay, so you mentioned school. All right, you guys tell Caleb, where is he? Was this words, phrases in this, or was this sentences? Was it paragraphs?
It was pretty close to paragraphs
It was pretty
because like
close.
he's saying I especially like history and I especially like German, but that wouldn't work if he switched it around.
Intermediate high.
All right.
Yeah, yeah,
Let's look at this. Like, let's answer these first, and then we'll get back to these. So sentences, definitely. Was there any did he put sentences in order? Well, let's ask this next question. Was he creating or was it memorized?
Creating. Yeah.
All right. This isn't stuff that you prepared and you just said because it was time.
Right.
Okay. So it was created. Was there any narrating?
A little bit of
Yeah, a little bit. He was saying
What was the
why.
description?
What
What did he describe?
School.
His class.
His class. What did he say about his class?
Interesting.
Interesting. All right, so let me point this out. There's a difference between using some labels and describing something. Here's the example I gave in the other class. So if I'm going to describe a green dragon, I could say it's a big and it's green. Right? That's not a description yet. Those are a couple labels I'm using. If I were to describe the green dragon, you would be able to tell the one I'm describing from any other green dragon, right? We line up 10 green dragons, I describe one of them, and you know which one it is, okay? So a description has enough there that you can distinguish it from something else. So saying that the class is interesting doesn't really set it apart from the other classes. So it's not yet a description, right? But it is definitely creating with language. that level, he's performing at intermediate. What about over here, controlling the topic?
Student
It's
teacher.
kind of
He is asking a couple questions, right? He asks a question, and then he talks for a little while. We don't really know who's going to control the topic yet. But we do know that he's performing right here in this area. There's not any of this down here. Okay, he might be organizing things a little bit more into a topical area, but not quite a paragraph. So he's functioning so far at intermediate low, right? So what we want to do is check and see if he can continue at intermediate low. So Frau First is going to ask a few more questions since you mentioned school. You can follow up, talk about school, ask some WH questions and see how much he can tell you about school.
Mhm. So Caleb, du hast gesagt, was ist dein Lieblingsfach? Kannst du mir sagen auch, welche Fächer du nicht magst und warum?
Englisch ist nicht besonders, aber ich hasse Englisch nicht.
Okay. Und warum ist es nicht so besonders? Was ist denn nicht so gut?
Englisch ist langweilig. Wir lesen selten Bücher. Wir lesen Geschichten, aber wir lesen keine Bücher.
Danke, das war schon ganz interessant. I'm just going to wrap it up quickly. I asked him, well, you mentioned what is your favorite subject. Can you mention subjects that are not so good for you and why? So I asked a why question and Caleb responded, ich finde Englisch nicht so besonders. I don't find English so special. I don't find it bad, but I don't like it so much. And then I asked further and say, yeah, but why don't you like it so much? And he said, it's boring, langweilig. And he said, we don't read much. We don't read books. We don't read much.
All right. I think we read stories, but we didn't read books.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's look back over here. So Caleb, you can self-assess in class together, see if you agree with Caleb. Where are you at? Are you sentences or paragraphs? So definitely there's sentences there. The question is, are they being put into order that's like a specific order? Or are they just, you're talking about your class. I think you're just talking about your class. You're using sentences there. Okay? You haven't gone to tell a specific story yet about the class, but you're still creating. Like you're able to create and talk. And it's also somewhere in between here. Again, it's kind of hard on such short.
And I interrupted him,
And
so
you
I don't know
interrupted
where
him.
he would have
Yeah.
gone with this, of course.
So
Yeah.
now that, now we're pretty confident that Caleb can do intermediate level speech, right? He's showing characteristics of this. So now the thing to do is to see if you can go up here and to ask him a question that will basically force him to either speak at that level or show that he can't, right? And this is, there's a word for it, but it's called, we were pushing him up to that level to see if he can do it. So what you would do is you would ask him, you would say, oh, so he's talking about English class. You would say, well, tell me a story about something that happened in English class, or for that matter, in class. Something that was memorable. Tell me a story about, so go ahead and do that and see where that goes.
Okay. And it's okay to not have all the answers, right? So, okay. So du sagst, ihr lest nicht viel Geschichten in Englisch oder ihr lest Geschichten in Englisch, aber nicht viele Bücher.
Ja.
Kannst du mal erzählen, was besonders gut in einer Englischklasse war und was ein Erlebnis war, was dann schön war? Yeah, so we haven't got the past tense yet. So that is already when I asked to, can you tell me? But we can also go from there and say, okay, kannst du mir sagen, was du interessant finden würdest? Gib mal ein Beispiel. Was ist interessant in Englisch?
Too many words about that specific
Telling
topic
stories
area.
and Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, let's pause right there. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is what happens when this is what we want to know. We want to know where your limit is because that tells you what you got to do next to get to the next level. All right. So it's kind of like obvious. You got to learn the past tense, and you got to learn some more vocab, and then you'll be working at the next level. So Caleb is like a very strong intermediate level speaker. He can produce those sentences, and now he knows, all right, if I learn to tell some stories and narrate, and what I would suggest is think of your classes and pick a couple things that happened that you remember, because for whatever reason they're memorable, and write out the story, like what happened, and use the verb conjugations and everything, and then practice that. Whenever it's practice time, start practicing that. And then you'll be able to use those stories, and that gets you into the advanced level. And you know, the great correlation for that's happening too. So that's the part about finding where your limit is. That's called your ceiling, and it happened in the other German class. It happened in the Spanish class today. The student is able to do this, but it's much more difficult to pick that story and talk about it. This requires so much more. Like you said, well, I don't have past tense yet, and there's a lot there that I want to find, I need to find. So what do you think? What do you think, Caleb?
Yeah.
Any comments?
Well,
Yes.
that's 5:21. Yeah.
It's 2:30. Got 5 minutos. All right.
Okay.
Any comments from you? Caleb is the one who stood up here in front of everyone.
Yeah. Excellent.
Right? For any level, like Caleb is able to speak at a very high level for level 2. Is this level 2? So you've had 1 year of German, basically. So that's exceptional.
What's exceptional, guys? Ausgezeichnet.
Yeah. There was something I wanted to point out, but I can't remember what it was.
One scene, we were talking about that, and then, yeah. But, guys, can I have some feedback from you? So, give me a thumbs up if you think you can, and I'll ask the question again in a moment, if you can talk in complete sentences, or a solala, okay? Or a downward if you think you can. Who thinks here they can talk in complete sentences?
Jonathan's actually German.
No. Yeah, well, he's German. That is something, but it's... All right, so, honestly, can I give you some feedback? You just took a quiz, right? I think everyone in here can talk in complete sentences. If I pull out those quizzes where you have to answer those questions with complete sentences, I'm pretty sure everyone, each of you in this class is. Like, when I ask you, do you want to eat tomato soup? And you say, yes, I want to eat tomato soup. That's a complete sentence.
This question.
You didn't say that?
We usually have points if we
Or when I say, what is one on one in a restaurant? Right? So I think that's really a good level. What will actually happen this year, actually in the next quarter, is that we will learn the past tense and talk about traveling. So my expectation for you is at the end of this year that you can narrate a little bit about stuff that you did on vacation, right? So that's the expectation. Yeah.
So to be, let's see, what are the benchmarks? Did we write them down in here? I forget where I wrote them down in. I've been to so many classes. So intermediate low, intermediate mid, and intermediate high. For level 2, intermediate low is a B, and intermediate mid is an A, and novice high is a C. Okay, so Caleb is demonstrating at the beginning of level 2 that he can perform at intermediate low, like he's maintaining that level. If he learns how to give some narrations and spend a little bit of time at the advanced level, that will put him into here, okay? And that would be equivalent to an A. So that's what you got to do. And I wanted to say, like, you pointed out earlier that intermediate is the linguistic survivor. If you can function at an intermediate level, right, you can get a topic and you can like do some sentences about it, you really are prepared to go to a foreign country and to begin to like interact with the people there and really function in the language, and that's really when you'll grow. So if you thought of going to Germany or somewhere where German is spoken, then I think this summer you could really have a good experience in German.
All right.
Anyway, thank you very much. This was
Thank you.
hopefully helpful.